have endorsed, at least to some degree, it was not a sweeping endorsement, but a cautionary endorsement of birth control. This was the first time that had happened. She'd been lobbying the Anglicans for 5 or 6 years. She was successful in that, and then the year following, the Federal Council of Churches, the committee of that group, again, all Protestants, issued a similar statement. It almost blew the council apart, but for her it was a great achievement. And again, her lobbying efforts, and a little later on, her secret contributions to the Federal Council of Churches of Christ were what made this happen. So again, she was a very effective lobbyist. She knew how to divide the Christians. She knew how to play to old animosities. And she also knew how to use eugenics as a way of selling birth control.
I mean, this is really remarkable. I mean, I think even Planned Parenthood advocates today, who in many ways have been as deft as Margaret Sanger in what shall we say, aligning themselves with liberal Christianity to an even greater degree, seem to just be pulling pages right out of a playbook.
No, she was good, and she was ruthless. She was good. She was single-minded. I mean, I can't say I admire her because I don't. I think the cause she was involved in was deeply anti-Christian and deeply hostile to human life. But with that said, I have to tip my hat to someone who knew how to get what she wanted and knew how to play the Christians. She knew how to use Christian divisions to sweep away 1,800 years of Christian consensus on sexuality and marriage.
Did the Roman Catholic Church ever find occasion to respond specifically to Margaret Sanger or to her idea?
Her great foe during the 1920s and 30s was Father John Ryan. He was a professor of social ethics at the Catholic University of America. He was the one who really did refine the Catholic view on birth control and contraception starting in 1915, 1916. He, in many ways, codified it. He certainly even had a hand when Pope Pius XI issued his encyclical on marriage in 1931, Casti Connubii. Again, Father Ryan was a major figure in that. But he and Margaret Sanger were constantly clashing swords. With that said, she usually got the better of the argument, not because she was a better thinker. Actually, Professor Ryan was a very bright man, very able advocate for the family wage, a defender of Christian marital sexual ethics. But again, she always managed to wind up placing him, again, as a spokesman for Romanist conspiracies that were trying to undo American liberties. Again, that's not what had been going on relative to birth control laws in America. These had been Protestant products. The Catholic Church had just sort of sat on the sidelines, silently cheering, wishing the Protestants well. But she managed, again, this is so fundamental in any public debate. If you can change the terms of debate and set the terms as you want, you're probably going to win. And that's what she succeeded in doing. And again, to be frank, with the exception of fundamentalists and through the late 1930s, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, the Christians were to blame. Fortunately, those groups continued to oppose contraception really up until World War II. And did so, not so effectively, but at least they maintained their own integrity.
Well, when we come back, he has mentioned several times the eugenics angle in Margaret Sanger's rhetoric, debate, and argument, with which she had some Christian allies. When did the eugenics angle disappear from Sanger's or her allies' rhetoric? We'll find out after this. Is our guest of the Howard Center. Folks, here's a way that you can help us defend life from beginning to end in the new year. Join the Issues Etc. Reformation Club. It's our monthly or annual giving program. Membership benefits include items like books, broadcast transcripts, and the I Have Issues t-shirt. You can find out more about the Issues Etc. Reformation Club at our website, issuesetc.org. Look for the picture of Martin Luther hosting the 95 Theses. It's the Issues Etc. Reformation Club. Dr. Carlson, you mentioned before the strong emphasis from Sanger and her allies on eugenics sermon, contests and things like that. When did that angle disappear from Sanger's or her allies' rhetoric?
Well, the rhetoric began to be troubled at, shortly after World War II, when the potential of eugenics to become a massively destructive and massively evil became clear in National Socialist or Nazi Germany. With that said, though, eugenics was still being talked about in positive ways really until about 1950. And a kind of soft eugenics managed to survive within the liberal American Protestant churches really until the early 1960s. There's a fine book by historian Amy Laura Hall called Conceiving Parenthood, American Protestantism and the Spirit of Reproduction. Came from Urban's a few years ago, and she ably shows that a form of soft eugenics involving rigorous family planning, well-spaced, well-gender-balanced children and families was part of the Protestant image on the liberal Protestant side, really into the early 1960s. So, like I said, Sanger's victory within the churches was also, at least within the liberal mainline churches, was also fairly extensive and fairly complete.
You mentioned the fundamentalists, and you mentioned the Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod. You said that their response was perhaps not as effective as it could have been. How did they respond specifically, and how could they have responded, or was it even possible for them at that time, at least I guess in the 30s, to wrest the debate back into terms that didn't favor Margaret Sanger and her organization?
Well, they could have. I think the group that did the best job on the fundamentalist evangelical side was probably the Moody Bible Institute. The Moody Bible Institute monthly repeatedly ran fine articles defending historic Christian sexual ethics, defending the old Christian consensus that the intentional limitations of birth was through artificial birth control, through birth control was wrong, was a sin. They did a pretty good job. First of all, by the 1930s, a lot of attention was being focused on other social issues, the Great Depression, widespread poverty, unemployment, and so on. And again, the Missouri Synod, while Margaret Sanger most of the time lashed out just at the Catholic Church, once in a while she'd also lash out with the wicked Missouri Synod Lutherans. They, like I say, they did pretty well up until World War II. It was during and right after World War II that first Missouri Synod, under the influence of Professor Ray Winkle at the seminary there, basically completely reversed course and accepted Margaret Sanger, even praised her as a great moral social leader. That took place after World War II. The evangelicals, it was really around 1960 that there you began to see them also joining the consensus surrounding Margaret Sanger and birth control, that it was a positive good. At that point, heavily the argument had to do with the world was becoming overpopulated. What else could they have done? They could have focused on the radical giftedness of all life. They could have had faith that God will provide. Global overpopulation is not going to lead to mass starvation, which in fact it didn't. The world is better fed today than it's ever been. Again, there was a loss of faith in God's providence, and very few people on the Protestant side, by the end of the 1960s, had managed to hold to that faith. A few did, but not many.
So, paint the canvas for us, if you would. How broad has Margaret Sanger's victory been, both against and allied with American Christianity?
Well, again, I think her victory in the broad sweep was quite complete.